Hey guys, long time no see. On screen is Spring Arrival. Hope you guys are doing well. As far as I know, and I could be wrong, this is the newest arrival on our farm, this baby giraffe. Now, I say that under correction because the message I got from my father was just the picture, no words, no nothing. So it could be an old picture, but I think just based on the timing and everything, I think this is a new little fellow that's been born on our farm. So yeah, it's a newborn baby because I was on our farm about, well, you saw the footage about a week ago. So it's not more than a couple of days old. So quite cute. I'll try and give you guys updates, and I'll try and get out there myself as soon as I can and give you guys a little bit more to look at. So yeah, so look out for that. So in terms of the schedule for today, I've made a little list. So baby giraffe done. I'm going to talk to you guys about the namesake of this channel, a peach tree that's doing some crazy things. And then I want to show you some photos that I took with my big camera in America that I saw for the first time myself a couple of hours ago. And then I want to talk to you guys about just some difficulties I've been having with the power going out here, despite putting solar in. And then, but we're going to kick off with Van Gogh. I don't want to leave that too late, so we're going to deal with Van Gogh now. So let me just. Are you guys all well? Stephanie H, it's good to see you here. It's good to see you here. Let's see who is here. Mel Stiller, Chelsea, Robbie Robin, good to see you. Sharon, did I say Mel Stiller? Deborah in Australia, and a couple of people that are lurking. But anyway, good to see you guys. Okay, so just to kind of orient you guys, if you look at the letter on screen, it's a little bit confusing in the chronology. It says the second half of December, which means it could be any time between around about the 15th and I guess Christmas, but prior to the ear incident. And then there's this letter written on the 23rd of December. And I want to ask you guys, which letter do you think was written first, right? So in terms of this letter, he says, I think myself that Gauguin was a little out of sorts with the good town of Arles, right? Now, bear in mind, by the time the next letter is written, and it's written by the postman to Theo, the next letter Theo gets after the 23rd isn't from his brother, it's from the postman, and that's this letter here. It's written on the 26th of December. So it seems like something happens on Christmas or very, very close to Christmas, a little bit like the John Benet Ramsey case, right? And what happens around Christmas? Festivities, people drink, people celebrate, it's also winter, and bear in mind they don't have the internet, they don't have TV, they don't have movies, so people are huddled around the same hearth, they are at close quarters, they're forced to kind of converse with one another, right? And then it is, as I say, kind of a time of celebration. So the question is, was there a letter written after this letter, 23rd of December? Bear in mind, between the 23rd and the 26th is when that happens. And so when he says Gauguin was a little out of sorts, is kind of a bit of a euphemism. He's saying Gauguin's not happy. He's not happy with all. He's not happy with the little yellow house, and he's especially not happy with me. And so the question is, what's the last letter Vincent writes before the ear incident? And I don't think it's this letter. I don't know what you guys think. Because in this letter, he talks in a more general way. He says, Gauguin and I went to Montpellier, we went to a museum, blah, blah, blah. Gauguin and I talked a lot about Delacroix, Rembrandt. He says, our arguments are terribly, terribly electric. So he's actually acknowledging here that they are arguing, right? And that's not a mystery because Gauguin himself writes to Theo and says, your brother and I are incompatible, right? And so he says, we come out of them, meaning we come out of the arguments with our heads as exhausted as an electric battery after it is run down, right? And then he says, Gauguin was saying to me this morning when I asked how he felt, that he felt his old self coming back, which gave me enormous pleasure. Right? And over here he says, a good hearty handshake all round from Gauguin as from me. And so the question is, which letter do you think came first and which letter came second? What do you guys say? Are you guys able to see it there? 17. Wow, that's quite a lot. The other thing that I think is quite interesting is, in terms of this archive of letters, the letter that Gauguin writes to Theo isn't here. So where Theo basically says, I've had enough of your brother, where's that letter? You know, that letter was written, where is it? So you kind of get a feeling from that the archivist, whoever is in charge of the stack of letters, right? Yeah, all the letters, right? Someone has decided, let's take that letter out the pile. It doesn't really reflect terribly well on Vincent or whatever, right? So that's kind of a strange thing that's not there, right? Stephanie says, I think the letter was written prior to the incident. T. Cancella, good to see you here. Well, everyone's still talking about giraffes. We'll come back to that. So the question I'm asking is, do you think this letter was written immediately, this one here, 2nd half of December, do you think it was written immediately prior to the ear incident, or do you think this one, where he talks about Gauguin's being a little bit out of sorts, especially with me, do you think that one is more, what's the word? Because I mean, that one's dated. For some reason, this one isn't dated. Which one do you think is the last letter before the ear incident? So let's just have a look at this one. He talks about grave difficulties to overcome. He talks about Gauguin is very powerful, strongly creative, and it's a very short letter, right? It's a very, very short letter. 23rd, it seems like something is happening, like something inevitable is happening on the 23rd of December. And then on the 24th, a telegram arrives from Gauguin that calls Theo to Arles, right? So just before Christmas, according to this, right? And then Gauguin says that his brother cut off a piece of his own ear, and there'd been a violent scene. So this is Gauguin's story, right? And obviously, Rouland repeats that story. And so what we're going to deal with in this analysis is the aftermath to all of this. The letters that Vincent and Gauguin write to one another. Do you get a sense of who is actually going on? Because they don't acknowledge it. They don't openly say, oh, you know, when you cut your ear off, blah, 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 blah. It's kind of, they don't actually, they tippy-toe around the subject matter. So you've really got to like read between the lines what's going on there. What's the other thing I wanted to say? In terms of the poll, I think it's a really interesting question. How long did it take for Van Gogh to unravel? Now, I think you guys will know from the whole true crime thing that there was a undermining process. The fact that Van Gogh was exhausted, the fact that he'd worked so hard to prepare the Yellow House, the fact that winter was setting in and he didn't handle winter that well. But like, you know, if we look at these letters, these very last letters that were written, for example, this one on the 23rd of December 1888, and here I want to see a show of hands. How many of you would say in this letter written on the 23rd of December, Van Gogh seems irrational, mad, crazy, making threats? Does he seem to be unraveling here on the 23rd? In other words, possibly the day before this event, right? Look how he talk. He says, "Thank you for the money you sent me." He doesn't exaggerate what's going on with Gauguin. He doesn't say Gauguin is driving me nuts. I've had enough of this guy. I can't take any more. If anything, he sort of minimizes it. He says he's a little out of sorts, and then he says, there you have an acknowledgement. Gauguin had written to Theo that Vincent and he could not go on living together. And so the question is, where's that letter? Why do we have this little bracketed text saying, guess what? Gauguin wrote a letter to Theo. Where's that letter, right? And so it seems between, if you ask me, it seems like it's between this letter where he talks about they have heated arguments, and I guess he's saying he enjoys them. Meanwhile, Gauguin doesn't seem to be enjoying them, right? And but the point is, in this very last letter, does Vincent seem unhinged? Does he seem emotional? Does he seem to be making wild statements? He talks about these difficulties are rather within ourselves than outside, right? What do you think? So if you go back to this question, how long did Van Gogh take to unravel? And you look at the date of this, that's what's so important. If this was the last letter, I mean, even if this was the last letter, you know, he's talking about Delacroix and you know, it's a long, sensible letter, right? I mean, the question I'm basically asking is there any sign of a unstable person in these letters, right? Let me say that again. Is there any sign of mental instability, of someone getting emotional, someone, you know, I mean, he talks, he acknowledges that there are arguments. He acknowledges that, so it's not like he's lying or he's being deceptive. But I mean, here he does say, what does he say here about the, he says, our arguments are terribly electric. So you kind of get the sense that he enjoys the arguments and, you know, because they're discussing artists and, but also that they must go on for hours because he feels like a battery that's run down afterwards. He says our heads are exhausted, and in a way, I guess you could say that maybe he's trying to put lipstick on a frog, or what, lipstick on a turd, because maybe he knows that Gauguin is going to write to his brother, and he's trying to make it seem like it's not that bad. But the point is, Van Gogh, doesn't he seem like he's okay, right? He's not saying, I can't deal with this guy living with me, whereas Gauguin is saying that, right? Van Gogh is saying arguments are electric, blah, blah, blah. He's not saying, I can't take this anymore. This guy's driving me crazy. He's, if anything, is enjoying his friendship, his relationship with Gauguin, right? Whereas it's Gauguin who can't handle it, who can't take it anymore, right? What does he say here? Gauguin had written that he could not go on living together, right? And then what's quite strange here was it says here the quarrel was made up, and Gauguin wrote another letter speaking of the first as a bad dream. So it seems like Gauguin was very upset, and then they kind of made peace, and then he got upset again. Gauguin got upset again. So you kind of get the feeling that Gauguin is the one who's getting rolled up, don't you? Right? I mean, Gauguin basically talks about temper, and we cannot go on living together. Can you imagine Van Gogh saying that? I can't carry on living with this person. And now, just in a very general sense, if you think about, and I was thinking about this the other day, if you think about the Vincent van Gogh that we know, is Vincent van Gogh a rude guy, right? Is Vincent van Gogh a aggressive person? Is Vincent van Gogh a insensitive person? Is he pushy, right? If you think about everything he's been doing, he's been preparing this house for Gauguin. He's been very self-deprecating. You know, he's been putting himself aside. He's been working very hard, right? He seems like an unselfish person. He also seems like not a very greedy person, someone who's quite self-sacrificing, right? And in a way, he has to be because his brother's paying the bills. He's got to, in a way, demonstrate himself to have a solid work ethic and whatever. You know, he's got to stay in Theo's good graces, and that's Vincent van Gogh. If you compare um, Gauguin to him, Gauguin has abandoned his wife and children. He's whoring around, kind of thing. He's just gotten a shitload of money, right? And so if you say that Van Gogh is unselfish, kind, generous, sensitive, do you think you can say the same about Gauguin? Or would you say that Gauguin is a selfish guy? He thinks about himself first and foremost. And now that he's gotten his money, that's the original reason why he went to Arles, was because he didn't have money. Well, now that he's got money, well, now he's happy just to leave Arles. And he feels like, well, I don't know, I don't owe Vincent anything, right? So some of you are saying that Gauguin is volatile, is explosive, right? Gauguin can't control his temper. I mean, I think earlier Vincent was talking about Gauguin being interested in sex and blood, like the idea that he sleeps with these prostitutes, but he also gets involved in brawls. You know, that's kind of the inference you get. Also, at the time that Gauguin arrives in Arles, he wants to go to the what do you call it? The Colosseum. He wants to see the bullfights, and you don't really get that impression that Van Gogh does that. Or maybe can't afford it. The other thing that's interesting, and you'll know this if you read the book that I wrote, when Gauguin returns. So you might say, cheapest Gauguin must be traumatized. So let's just say you have the scenario of, just take this off for a second. Let's just say you have the scenario where Gauguin is traumatized by this guy getting drunk, cutting his ear off, and just this incredible drama that's playing out in front of him, right? And then, if that's the case, why would he go straight from Arles? And this is a fact. He goes straight from Arles to Paris, and while he's waiting for his connecting train, he attends an execution. You heard that right? Right. So in other words, thanks a lot, Robbie Robin. Thank you. I've been seeing you all over the place in comments. I know you're in the UK, so it's quite late there. Thanks a lot. So he literally goes from Arles to, this is Gauguin. After the incident, he goes to Paris, and it's almost like hours later. Gauguin is watching an execution, and he's so interested in it, he pushes his way to the front. And what happens is it's like a botched execution. And in those days, they used the guillotine. It's a botched execution, and he's right in the front seeing this horrible thing in front of him. And then the very first sculpture he does after that is, it's like a, I wish I could show it to you, but it looks like a metallic head that you drink out of, right? It's like the looks not a skull, but it looks like the head of a person, and it looks like blood is coming down the sides of the head, and then that is actually a mug that you drink out of. And so that's already telling you Gauguin is a strange creature, right? Is a strange creature. Let me see if I can find you that. Yeah, he attends an execution in Paris while he's awaiting his. Let me just see if I can find that Gauguin mug. Or yeah, here it is. So that is what he creates. Oh, you can't see that. That is what he creates subsequent to Van Gogh losing his ear. And he describes this as a self-portrait, but I wonder whether it's not actually Van Gogh. I don't know. Can you guys see that? Let's make it a bit bigger. And you can see there, this was made in 1889. And so, does it have any reference to Van Gogh? And I go into a lot of detail about this particular self-portrait. Why is there so much green in it? And I thought there's even green in his eyes. Look at his eyes. Why are his eyes so green? And my reasoning is that he's reflecting in the self-portrait of his sin, that he was envious of Gauguin, right? Look how green his jacket is, but especially his eyes. There's green in his eyes. You know, there's that saying, green with envy, right? And so, isn't he recognizing that whatever the substance behind the ear incident, he was feeling envy towards Gauguin, and why wouldn't he? Because Gauguin had, in the space of a couple of days, sold, I think, 3 different paintings, whereas Van Gogh had not sold any until at that point. And so the question now remains: what did happen with the ear incident? Did he cut off his own ear in a fit of envy, right? But who does that, right? Or did Gauguin want to leave? Van Gogh was telling him, "No, please stay, please stay. You know, I've done so much," and to kind of get rid of him, Gauguin maybe did something rash. Well, we're going to find out now in the next couple of letters. Okay. So let's go to. So here's the letter from the 26th December, and now we're going to go to the letter from the doctor. Okay, 29th of December. So this is immediately after the ear incident. So we'll look at some of your comments. That's it. Interesting. Yeah, it does seem that way. It does seem that way. So, so if we just before we resume with this, if we come back to the question, how long did Van Gogh take to unravel, right? What do you think the answer is, just based on this bit of analysis we've done? I don't think the answer is months. I don't think it's like he's having a nervous breakdown and he's drinking. I don't think it's months, right? Isn't that what most of you guys voted? I don't know if it's weeks either, although I think that is a better answer. But if you take the letter that is written on the 23rd, Van Gogh still seems to be on top of things. You know, he's kind of got a good sense of humor, saying that that Gauguin's a little out of sorts with the town of Arles. So see from the poll, please vote if you haven't already. 29% say months, 38% say weeks. And weeks isn't a bad answer, because definitely something was happening in the month of December, right? So you could say it took 2 or 3 weeks, maybe. Or even the entire time Gauguin was there, something was going on. But I'm wondering whether it's not either days or hours, because it seems like if you take the letter on the 23rd, and then the ear incident happens apparently on the 24th, well, what is separating the 23rd, where, so in other words, Vincent sits down and writes a letter, and the letter makes sense. He's not like so drunk that his hands going all over the letter, you know. He's able to sit down and write a letter. That means he's sensible. So isn't the answer less than a day, or a day, or less than a day, meaning it took him actually hours to unravel? And how do you unravel in a period of hours? And I think, even if I say so myself, I think that is a very smart question to ask in this case. Let me type it out. How do you unravel in a couple of hours? And I mean, if you think about the substance of that question, if you say, how does a person unravel in a couple of hours? Are we really talking about madness? Are we really talking about insanity? Are we really talking about mental illness? What, and so if the answer is no, then what are we talking about? Mickey says reality sets in. Yeah, losing your temper, that's quite a good answer. Bruni, good to see you. I think we've got both Stephanies in. I always feel all is well with the world when we have both Stephanies in chat. Now we just need Iceland and Terry Dean. Zircon says I answered weeks. You know, there's a bit of truth in all of them. He was unraveling over a period of months, while Gauguin wasn't. You know, he said he's coming, and then he didn't really leave. The weeks that he was there, the weeks is a pretty good answer. But I'm just saying, based on that letter written on the 23rd, and then the telegram arrives on the 24th, it seems like he goes from writing that letter with his ear, with his senses, with his sensibilities, to whatever happens. So let's have a look at what you guys are saying. Christina says trauma. Yeah, Stephanie. It's quite weird. I met both Stephanies in Manhattan, and yeah, and both Stephanies went with me to the Met, and yeah, pretty cool. Okay, so I'm going to give you my my thoughts on this. How do you unravel in a couple of hours? Well, one way is you drink a lot. So in other words, you can take any person, you can take theoretically every person in chat right now, and if you start drinking and you just don't stop, well, within a couple of hours, probably even less, you're going to unravel. You're going to, you know, just any person who gets extremely drunk is going to act crazy, right? Anybody. So that's one. You guys agree that that's one possibility? And bear in mind, it's during the, what do they call it, the 12 days of Christmas. It's the 23rd of December. I think Theo had also sort of announced that either, I can't quite remember, Chelsea, you might know this better than me because it's in the book. Theo, I think, had announced that either he's getting engaged or that his fiancée is pregnant. I think he was getting engaged. And so you can imagine that Vincent kind of wants to celebrate, right? And Gauguin's probably thinking, I don't want to celebrate. I want to get out of here. I don't have a party. I need an excuse to skedaddle, kind of thing, right? Engaged. There we have it. Okay. So can you see how you can unravel and be quite a handful if you drink a lot? You don't have to be mad, right? And so it's once again this whole idea of, you have it in true crime, but you also have it generally in society. In order for Van Gogh to do something strange, he's got to be mad. Yeah, but he could also just be drunk. I mean, it's not that crazy to be drunk over Christmas. In fact, there's some, if you look at what the housekeeper says about Patsy Ramsey, that she was drinking a little bit as well. It's not that unusual. It's not strange, right? Deborah says, why did Gauguin cut Vincent's ear off? Let's not answer that question right now, and let's try and first get confirmation that he did, and we can deal with it, with the why a little bit later. So can you see quite a lot is happening? Theo gets engaged. Vincent is actually having the time of his life. He's got an artist staying with him. He's having these conversations, and it looks like he's set up this colony, and that whole lonely episode of his life is over, only for Gauguin to say, sorry, bud, I'm out of here, right? And maybe Gauguin breaks it to him when Vincent's drunk, almost like, let's have a drink, there's something I need to tell you, right? Maybe that's what happens. In any event, I think you're finding a heck of a lot out about Van Gogh if you say, and if it's true, if you say it took him hours to unravel, right? Because if you take that psychology and you then take that into the suicide, then you say, how long did he take to unravel there? And I can guarantee you, we can go through the letters, you'll see the very last letter he writes is also completely normal, completely matter of fact. So then you say again, how long does he take to unravel before he commits suicide? And then the answer is not months, it's not weeks, it's either days or hours. And then again, you've got to say, what can happen in a couple of hours where someone gets shot? What? Did he suddenly go mad in a couple of hours again? And the answer, I think, is I think probably not. Didn't something else happen? Okay, so let's deal with the next letter. So this is the letter from the doctor, Felix Ray, to Theo van Gogh, from Al, 29th of December, 1888. And if I remember correctly, I could be wrong on this, Theo had already come down from Paris to see his brother and also to collect Gauguin, and then he left virtually the next day. He basically arrived, saw his brother, had a quick chat with him, saw Gauguin, and the two of them then went back to Paris, right? And so by the 29th of December, Theo's back in Paris with his fiancée, and now this doctor is writing the letter to Theo. Okay. Monsieur, I hasten to respond to your letter and to give you the latest on the state of your brother. I will first of all tell you that it is very difficult to definitively answer all the questions that you ask me. Now, this is a really interesting perspective, is if you say Theo wants to know what the hell is going on, right? Theo who wants to know more about what really happened here than Theo, right? Maybe Vincent says, I cut off my own ear, right? But Theo must be thinking, what the hell's going on? I got a letter from him on the 23rd and he was fine. What's going on here? And so so Theo then goes to the doctor and says, please answer these questions for me. I need to know what the fuck's going on, right? And so he says, I will, however, give you my personal opinion. Appreciation. The Protestant pastor, Mr. Sauls, came to find me this evening and we went to visit him. He was very calm, right? So there you have it. So Vincent's not like he started going mad like on the 23rd and he's still mad. In other words, it's not like he goes mad, cuts off his ear, and he's still mad, right? And that I think is also a very important point to make is you could imagine he went through some kind of episode, whatever you want to call it, epilepsy, mania, paranoia, psychosis, whatever. You could say that maybe he drank a lot or whatever, and or he had some kind of underlying condition like what do they call it, neurosyphilis, and so he basically kind of just started going mad, right? But then why is he already calm a couple of days later, right? I would personally totally accept it if you said that he was irrational on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday for like 2 weeks or a week. But how can you kind of on the 23rd be rational? Then when you cut off your ear, apparently you've gone mad, and then you're back to being rational the next day. Is that how madness works? Is that how mental instability works? What's going on? To me, what's going on? I don't understand. Okay, come. Ralph, Timmy says hi. Timmy says hi. Hey. Okay. So, yeah, I've heard quite a lot that is bipolar. Timmy, thanks. You've really messed this up now. Thanks a lot, Timmy. Timmy, it's just frustrating. Let me do that. Well, is it gonna? There we go. Okay, thanks, Timmy. You managed to do your thing. Okay. Yeah, so blood loss is definitely a factor. It's difficult to be a raving lunatic if you've lost a couple of pints of blood. Anyway, so he says, when he saw me entering his room, he told me that he wanted to have the least possible contact with me. Without a doubt, he thought it was I who had locked him up. I've assured him that I'm a friend to him and I want to see him well again very soon. So can you see, he says he thought it was I who had locked him up. And so it does seem like there's a little bit of paranoia going on there, like a little bit of he doesn't really know what's going on. And you can imagine if he did get very, very drunk and he did behave in a totally uninhibited way, that it would take a while to come back to his senses. He'd be hungover and he'd be, not completely alert. Oh, is he passed out? Okay. He says, I've assured him that I'm a friend to him and I want to see him well again very soon. I didn't hide the situation from him and explained to him why he was isolated in a room. I told him that his attacks didn't allow us to let him in the wards among our other patients. So I don't want to, what's the word? I don't want to like do this live and be like a cheerleader for my own theory. Like I don't want to be like, it's definitely Gauguin, whatever. I think we've got to be open-minded to what could have happened. So when he talks about his attacks didn't allow us to let him in the wards, it does seem like he's acting out. It does seem like he's So in other words, he does seem to be behaving badly, right? And the question now is, again, is he mad or is he emotional? Like Gauguin has basically just left him. And I don't know about you, but if you've spent weeks, even months preparing a place and getting things into a certain what's the way what's the word a certain condition, and then suddenly this guy just f's off. I'd be out of sorts, put it that way. And if on top of that you're drinking, you're not very happy and you're drinking, and bear in mind we're not talking about alcohol here, we're actually talking about absinthe. And I thought my Chelsea will be able to bear this out. I thought my analysis of absinthe was quite important in the book, The Murder of Vincent van Gogh, because absinthe has been associated with psychotic behavior. It's actually illegal in, I think, places like Switzerland and France. I think it became illegal in something like, what was it, 1910 or 1920, where someone committed a crime on absinthe, and then when they sort of woke up, didn't really know what they did. And so it's possible that on absinthe, Van Gogh behaved like a mad guy, and Gauguin tried to defend himself. Does that make sense? So I don't want to go into the absinthe narrative too much. You can read my book if you want to go into that. Chelsea, am I right about the that it was declared illegal in about 1910 in Switzerland, following a kind of Chris Watts type incident? Anyway, so he says, we talked a good while and we parted as good friends. He begged me to write to you and give you all the news, something he wouldn't have done at the start of our interview. So, it's not as though he doesn't completely know what's going on. He's saying, please write to Theo, please tell him what's going on. Then he says, when I tried to talk to him about the motive, there it is. People say that this is not true crime. I tried to talk to him about the motive that had driven him to cut off his ear. He said it was a personal business. So can you see it's already getting a bit murky? It's already like he doesn't want to talk about it. Why can't he just say, I was upset and so I cut off my ear? Why can't he just say that? Why can't he just say, you know what, I'm quite a lonely dude, Gauguin. I've really had my hopes pinned on Gauguin, and I was so frustrated. I cut off my ear. I thought it might. It's almost like the Lucy Letby. I thought that I could, like the way that she would get the doctors to come into the ward. I thought if I cut off my ear, Gauguin would stick around an extra day or an extra week or something like that. He doesn't say that. Maybe that's what he thought. But another possibility is that they had an argument, right? Maybe he was embarrassed. But there you have it. He says it's a personal business. Then he says, in summary, I find that his taste is a bit better, and I don't think his life is in danger, at least for the moment. He's eating well enough, and his physical strength allows him to weather his attacks. My appreciation is that he will be healed shortly while retaining this great excitability that is the basis of his character. Now, I don't think it's fair to say something like this. Gauguin's a bad guy, Gauguin's a jerk, Gauguin cut off his ear, and poor innocent Van Gogh. Something was going on with Van Gogh. Van Gogh definitely was going to brothels more than he usually was. He definitely was arguing more than he usually was. He definitely was drinking more than he usually was. So he definitely was part of whatever happened in some way. The bottom line is him and Gauguin did argue. And what I'd like to know is who argues, right? Who argues and then cuts off their own ear in the middle of an argument? Like, what's more likely? You argue and then you cut off your own ear, or you argue with someone and the other person gets so riled up that they don't say, I'm going to try and cut off your ear, but they try and cut you off in some way or fend you off in some way, try and hold you at arm's length in some way, right? There you go. That's exactly it. Okay. So he goes on to say, we will take care of him here for the moment, both for his ear and his not quite sound mental state. Now, can you see that is, I think that's an accurate way of putting it. He isn't completely stable at this point. He's not in a completely sound mental state. But let me ask you, if you'd lost your ear in any way, like in an accident, your ear basically just fallen off, would you be in a sound mental state? I mean, your face is now mutilated forever. Would you be okay with that? Just that, take away everything else. Your friend has left you, you're now alone in the yellow house, all of that. What's easy to forget with the whole ear thing is that it's not just the pain of what has happened to him, but he's also been betrayed in the worst possible way. This guy that he's been doing so much for has now just decided, oh, well, I don't really like you and I've got my money, so bye bye, right? And so his whole dream of this yellow house is now in tatters. And you might say, isn't that a bit of an exaggeration that, he can just go back to the yellow house and try again? Well, what you're going to see in the next couple of days and weeks is that Vincent is going to be forced to move out of the yellow house. And so that whole thing is over, right? That whole enterprise that meant so much to him, and he was becoming so happy, and he painted the Red Vineyard, one of his best paintings in a while, and the only painting he ever sold in his life. He painted that during the Yellow House period, right? And so now this is a huge setback. And I think that is something it's going to be very hard for him to get over. And it's not only going to be hard to get over anyway, he's now going to be completely alone. He went from having the yellow house and having all of these hopes and Gauguin being with him, and now he's going to be completely alone for a whole year during the time of this big exhibition in Paris, the World Fair. Now crushing that disappointment's got to be. So if we go back to the letter, he says, a few days ago, we wrote out a certificate of mental alienation. The mayor has signed a decree leaving him temporarily in the care of the hospital while waiting for his transfer to an asylum. So what you're seeing there is the people of Arles have decided he needs to leave, right? You literally have the scandal. You literally have the embarrassment, the humiliation of having the mayor say, we don't want you in our town anymore. And bear in mind, he was an expat, he's a Dutch dude living in France. And the people have decided, that guy who cut off his ear, that guy who's lost his ear, he needs to get out of here. We don't want him in our town anymore. If you take away the ear thing, what can be more crushingly hurtful than that? Can you imagine someone writing a letter saying, we're kicking you out of our town? You're not just leaving your own home, you're being kicked out of your town. And you already don't have that many friends, and you don't really have that much money. And you've been holding on to this fairy tale, and now you've lost that as well. Absolutely. Okay, so He says, during this time, the police commissioner will make his inquest. Then the prefect will issue the order to take him to A or Marseille. And in the end, he didn't go there. He went to Saint-Remy. Now, again, can you see how there's a true crime aspect to this? The police are kind of doing their own investigation, right? And they're going to issue an order, right? Then he says, I was myself an intern in this latter city a few months ago, and I would be happy to recommend him to the colleague who replaced me, who is one of my good friends. Nevertheless, I will take the liberty to ask you a question and give you some advice. Would you rather have your brother in an asylum close to Paris? Can you afford it? Now, it's important to stress that in 1888, asylum didn't necessarily mean the madhouse, right? In 1888, an asylum could mean a hospital, right? Um, I'm a little bit rusty. I'm a little bit rusty regarding the asylum at Saint-Remy. As far as I know, it had a combination of people who had mental illness and people who were ill in another way. But I just think it's important to be clear that an asylum in 1888 isn't the same thing that we know of as an asylum today. Today, you would never refer to a hospital as an asylum. You talk about someone went to the mental asylum, right? Um, so So I think that may be one reason why there's this idea, it might be something that's sort of lost in translation, why there's this idea that Van Gogh was mad. Well, if he went to an asylum, he must have been mad, right? And the fact of the matter is there is some truth in the madness narrative. He was struggling mentally. So it's not like I'm not going to tell you that there was no mental um, struggle going on. There was. There definitely was a mental struggle going on. But I'll also say, if you were kicked out of a town for being drunk and you lost your ear and you lost your home, wouldn't you also be a little unhinged? I think most people would be. There you go. That's a really good point. It's a good point. Okay. Then he says, if yes, you should go and find one quickly. His state will certainly allow him to make the journey. So even him saying that is saying, you know what, your brother's not that mad that he couldn't do a long trip to Paris. He could make that journey. Then he says, this business has not gone so far that it cannot be stopped, and for the commissioner to cancel his report. So he's saying, you know what, your brother could actually theoretically stay in all. Maybe we can work things out. Then he says, this is all the advice that I have to give you on your poor brother. You asked me for my appreciation. I've given it to you for what it's worth. Since I also have a brother, I would be delighted to give you any news. Also, I've lived away from my family. In some months' time, I will be going to Paris for my doctorate thesis. I would be glad if someone looked out for me during my ordeal. So you really get a sense that this doctor, Monsieur Felix Ray, is quite a good guy. Is a nice guy. Um, and so he says, please accept the assurance of my best regards. Okay, let's go on to the next letter from the 29th December to the 31st December. And now it's a letter from the Reverend to Theo. And really where I want to get to is the first letter that Gauguin writes to Vincent and the first letter that Vincent writes to Gauguin. If my voice can stand it, hopefully we can get there. And I think it happens in January, if I'm not mistaken, January or February. Okay, so he says, Monsieur, I'm Going to give you news of your brother. I've just seen him and found him calm, in a state which does not show anything abnormal with him. So here we've got yet another opinion. Someone saying, I've just seen Vincent and he doesn't seem abnormal. Again, if he was like going insane as he suddenly recovered his sanity, that tends not to be how mental instability works. Anyway, he says, unfortunately, as a result of the insane act which required his admission to the hospital and the more than strange behavior that showed in that establishment, the doctors found it necessary to isolate him and place him in an isolated room, which they can keep locked. Now, I also think if how can I put this? If you cut off your ear on purpose, you probably won't cut off your ear and then go and sit down and watch television. You won't take your dog for a walk. You know, you'll be in a lot of discomfort. You'll probably be running around. And so whether you cut off your own ear or somebody else cuts off your ear, you probably won't be very relaxed. You'll probably be extremely restless. Does that make sense? In terms of this, he says the insane act. And then he says the more than strange behavior that he showed in that establishment. So those of you who know me, those of you who read the book, my scenario that I give is it's not a, as I said, it's not a case that Van Gogh is this innocent angel and Gauguin is this monster who for no good reason lashes out at him. In my scenario, Van Gogh is behaving in a very erratic's not really a strong enough word. He is acting crazy. And so this then triggers a response. And so it's not that Van Gogh does nothing in a way to deserve what happens to him. He does do something, I'm not saying he deserves it, but he does do something, I believe, that leads to this response. Sharon says the asylum would be the safe place. Yeah, that's right. Okay, so let's continue. So he says, it is their opinion that he must be transferred to a lunatic asylum. Or there you have it, Sharon. There they are saying, not like a hospital, for sure, an insane asylum, right? And they've made a report to this effect to the mayor. So between the doctor's letter on the 29th of December and the pastor's letter, the reverend's letter 2 days later, it seems like the good people of all have decided we need this guy out of here, right? And he must go to a lunatic asylum. He's a lunatic. And so he must go to a lunatic asylum. This report will cause an inquiry and the result will be sent to the prefect. In other words, this will lead to an investigation and the result will be sent to the prefect. I guess that's like the police commissioner, and who will probably order your brother's transfer. In other words, they're saying if this happens, then your brother's going to get kicked out of this town. I wanted to warn you of what is going on with respect to your brother, something of which he himself seems to fully understand. That's quite an interesting point. He's saying something's going on with your brother, but by the way, he seems to know that it's happening. I repeat, I found him talking calmly and not raving any more than anyone else. He is amazed, even indignant, which could be sufficient to start another attack, that they keep him shut up in this way and that they completely deprive him of his liberty. He would like to leave the hospital and go back home. I think that I'm quite capable of taking up my work again. So basically he's saying, you know what? I'm happy just to go home and get back to work. Why then are they keeping me like a prisoner? He's kind of saying, I can be a prisoner in my own home. I kind of have been anyway. Why do you want to keep me a prisoner here? It's quite a rational argument from his perspective. He spoke to me of you and told me how much it astonished him that you had not written to him since you left. I promised him I would give you his news tonight. He would even have liked to send you a telegram to make you come here. I left him deeply saddened and regretting that I was not able to bring any alleviation to his situation. So you kind of get a sense that the Reverend is compassionate and sympathetic and understands that this man has lost a lot, that this is a broken man. What else does he say? But there's quite a few references to him being talking calmly, and he understands what's going on with him, blah blah blah. But he also says, where does he say that about raving? Um, Something about raving. There it is. Not raving anymore. So that suggests that he was raving at some point, that he was acting in a crazy fashion. Okay, so let's go on to the next letter. And so this is really important. This is Vincent in his own words writing to his brother. What is he going to say? Right? This is so valuable. This is Vincent after the ear incident saying, Theo, let me explain. What does he say? Let's have a look. So the 2nd of January is essentially a week after he lost his ear. So he says, My dear Theo, so as to reassure you completely on my account, I write to you these few lines in the office of the intern M. Ray, Monsieur Ray, whom you have yourself met. I shall stay at the hospital for a few more days, then I think I can count on quietly returning to the house. Right? Now, let me just say the following. Does that sound like a guy who's nuts? Just the beginning of the letter. He's writing his brother a letter. Does it seem like he's going like this and, does it seem like he can't really express himself? The other thing is he's writing to his brother to reassure his brother. Why must he reassure his brother? Surely, in a weird way, he needs to be calmed and reassured. Can you appreciate the irony of this? Isn't the person who's just been abandoned, betrayed, whatever, isn't he the one that should really be reassured in the situation? Vincent, I'm sorry that this has happened. You're going to be okay, right? And one does wonder when Gauguin and Theo went back to Paris together, what on earth did Gauguin say to Theo about Vincent? What did he whisper into his ear? What is that all about? Anyway, so Vincent is now trying to reassure Theo um, about what's going on. And it really does remind me of Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie. Why does Vincent need to reassure Theo? Because Vincent wants to stay in the yellow house. Theo's paying for all this, so Vincent wants his van life adventure to continue. And it is very much at risk that it's not going to continue, where Theo's going to say, sorry, you are in trouble. You can't carry on doing this anymore. You're in danger. But so he wants to say, no, 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 I'm reassuring you, I'm fine, just like Gabby did at the Moab stop. Does that make sense? And so he says, I beg of you only one thing, not to worry. Please don't worry about me. Now, if it had been something else, and we know Van Gogh by now, we know that when he's in a state of despair, he tells his brother. When he says, I need your help, he tells his brother. Now he's saying, don't worry. It says, don't worry because that would cause me too much of a worry. He says, if you worry, that's going to make me worry. Again, does that seem like a crazy guy? Then he says, now let's talk about our friend Gauguin. Have I terrified him? And I think that is an incredibly bizarre statement, but also interesting statement. Have I terrified him? And that seems to be, in a way, an admission. Didn't I do something that made him react, made him afraid, made him change his mind about me? Did I terrify him in such a way that he felt terrified and then did something? In short, why hasn't he given me any sign of life? And so this, I think, is quite an interesting comment. If Van Gogh cut off his own ear, why is Gauguin not supportive whatsoever? Why is he not acting like a friend? Why is there not even a polite inquiry? How is your brother doing? And so my question to you is, and it's a kind of a true crime question, is this a sign of guilty knowledge? The fact that Gauguin leaves all and doesn't look back and doesn't care, is that a sign of guilty knowledge? Then he says, it's almost like he doesn't even know this. He says, he must have left with you, right? And so can you see that he actually feels, in a way, he feels like he's lost a friend. He says, besides, he had a need to return to Paris. So that's one of the last things he remembers from Gauguin. Gauguin wanted to go back to Paris. And so would a drunk Van Gogh or a Van Gogh totally inebriated on absinthe, given the knowledge that Gauguin's going to leave him, would he act in a crazy way? And then did Gauguin react to that behavior? That's the question. And then he says, he will feel more at home than here in Paris. Tell Gauguin to write to me and that I think about him all the time. So once again, remember I said at the beginning of this, I said, which one of these two people is unselfish? Which one of these two people is kind of sensitive? Which one of these two people is kind? Which one of these two people is, I guess, forgiving, right? And then the flip side of that is, which one is unkind, nasty, selfish, and all those things, right? So why would Gauguin not hurt Vincent? I'm talking about, why would he not have hurt him physically if he's already hurting him psychologically and through him leaving the way that he did and when he did? Does that make sense? It's like in the Chris Watts case. Do you remember what the story that he told? He said, he found Cece in the situation she was in, and he found Bella in the situation she was in. And then the officer said to him, well, didn't you try and perform CPR? And he didn't know what to make of that statement, like, because it wasn't true, right? And the same thing applies to Gauguin. Why didn't you perform a kind of psychological CPR? Write back to your friend, are you doing okay? Thanks a lot for what you did for me. If you need anything, let me know. Why does Gauguin just leave in the way that he does? Is it guilty knowledge? Okay, And so this is not a very long letter. He says, a good handshake. I've read and reread your letter about your meeting with the Bongers, right? And the Bonga, that is a reference to, I think, his future in-laws. Um, Joe Bonga is going to become Theo's wife and also the person who gets the letters out into the world, the Van Gogh letters. Then he says, it's perfect. As for me, I'm content to stay just as I am. You know, a statement like that, I'm content to stay just as I am. This guy's just freaking lost his ear. His friend has abandoned him. He doesn't sound very emotional or out of control. And then again, he says, a good handshake to you and Gauguin, Vincent. Then he says, write to me at the same address. And then this is a note from Dr. Ray. I add a few words to your brother's letter to reassure you in my turn on his account. So even the doctor's saying, don't worry about your brother, he's fine. And the letter seems to show that he's fine as well. I'm happy to tell you that my predictions have been realized and that this overexcitement has only been temporary. Again, doesn't that make sense? If he got drunk on absinthe, then it would be temporary. I strongly feel that he will be himself in a few days. Again, would the doctor say that if he had some serious underlying disorder? Would the doctor say that? Kerrigan, good to see you here. Lorraine says, not necessarily guilty knowledge. Vincent is interrogating his brother in this letter. I don't know if I'd say he's interrogating his brother. He's trying to reassure his brother. Okay. Then he says, I have made a point of his writing to you himself to tell you in his own words his condition. And isn't it awesome that he did that? Because we've got Vincent in his own words very close to the incident. I made him come down to my office to talk for a bit. It will entertain me and it will do him good. Yours truly, Ray. Okay, so we go now from the 2nd of January to the 3rd of January. So now it's a letter from the postman, Joseph Rouland, to Theo van Gogh. Short little letter. I'm happy to confirm the telegram I sent you today, in which I told you that my friend Vincent has completely recovered. He will leave the hospital one of these days to return to his house. Do not worry, he is better than before that unfortunate accident that happened to him. Now, can you see, if you ask me, hasn't Roulin kind of walked back what he said in the beginning? Like, calling this an unfortunate accident kind of seems a little bit different to what he said originally. Anyway, he says, at present he can move freely about the hospital. We walked for over an hour in the courtyard. He's in a very healthy state of mind. And you kind of get the idea that Vincent is kind of doing PR, is trying to get the doctor to convince his brother, is trying to get the postman to convince his brother. But obviously they wouldn't say this if they weren't convinced anyway. Um, I do not know how to explain the severe measures that were taken to keep him from seeing his best friends. Now, he may be in an okay state of mind, but how long is that going to last? I mean, are they going to let him go back to the Yellow House? What do you think? Okay, let's go on to the next letter. 4th of January, another letter from Vincent to Theo, written in pencil. My dear brother, I hope that Gauguin will completely reassure you and a bit about the painting business too. So can you see how a common thread that is going through these letters is reassurance? So it's like Van Gogh loses his ear and he's just trying to reassure, trying to reassure. If you again think about Gabby Petito, wasn't she trying to reassure the officer that she was fine, that Brian hadn't done anything, that they could just carry on, that there was nothing really to worry about, right? And now he's saying, I hope that Gauguin will completely reassure you. Almost like, I hope Brian's going to reassure you that we're okay in the situation. Then he says, I expect to begin work again soon. So you can see how he just wants to go back to normal. He wants to go back to the yellow house, and he just wants to continue. Now, if you think about that idea in two perspectives, the one perspective is Van Gogh has had a breakdown, right? He's had a mental breakdown. He's struggling with his sanity. Do you think he would want to go back to work soon if that was the case? In other words, if he's struggling with mental illness, do you think he'd be like, "Wow, I want to go. I want to continue working," right? If I'm just saying, if it's a serious mental problem, do you think he would be thinking about going back to work? Conversely, if um, Gauguin had done something to him, would he want to kind of just put that behind him and get back to work? Which one makes the most sense? I'm just saying, if you have cut off your own ear, isn't that a sign that you totally despairing, that you don't want to live even, that life is horrible and unbearable, and you just can't cope with it, with everything? And then how come the next moment his motivation is right back where it was, right? Right. And so the other thing is, someone has not treated you very well, and now you just want to get back to work. I mean, not treated very well is definitely a euphemism, I'd say. Okay, the charwoman and my friend Roulon had taken care of the house and put everything in order. When I come out, I shall be able to take my little road here again, and soon the fine weather will be coming, and I shall recommence on the orchards in the bloom. So, it's barely January, right? It's the 4th of January, and he's talking about spring, and he's talking about fine weather coming. You can see his very much um, is being a little bit unrealistic here. He's being a little bit too positive, I guess. My dear brother, I'm so terribly distressed at your journey. So there you have him saying, I'm really distressed. I'm really upset. I'm really feeling terrible. Not about Gauguin, not about my ear. I mean, I'd be distressed about my ear. I'm distressed that you had to make this journey all the way here for nothing. So you can't even say that he's so compromised by his feelings, his emotions, his instability that he can't think about what his brother went through. What he's acknowledging here is that he can, and that he does, that he's distressed that his brother had to make this journey. So once again, you're seeing the self-deprecating Van Gogh. You're seeing the Van Gogh who puts himself second. It's the same Gabby Petito thing that's taking place, right? I'm not going to say who hurt me. I'm going to put myself second so that this journey can continue. I should have wished you I should have wished you had been spared that, for after all, no harm came to me, and there was no reason why you should put yourself to that trouble. So, if Van Gogh did cut off his own ear, why would he say this? Why would he say, no harm came to me? And I mean, what I'm trying to say is, do you think what he's saying is true and reliable? He's saying, I don't know why you came to all. In other words, he's trying to minimize it. He's trying to say, after all, no harm came to me. Well, he lost his ear. That's a heck of a lot of harm. The people said that they actually thought he had died when they saw the scene, when they saw him in his bed, and you know um, the whole bed had changed color. Um, they didn't think he was alive anymore. So harm did come to him. Then he says, there's no reason why you should put yourself to that trouble. That's how badly Van Gogh wants to stay stay in Theo's good graces. And you can see through that also why he wants to stay in Gauguin's good graces. That's an interesting point. Also interesting point. That's right. There you go. Good word. That's it. Okay. So then he says, I cannot tell you how glad I am that you have made peace and even more than that with the Bongers. Say that to Andre from me, that Joe's brother is Andre, and give him a very cordial handshake from me. What would I not have given for you to have seen all when it was fine? As it is, you have seen it in black. Now, we've dealt with something like 700 letters already, right? We are now at episode 69. We do about 10 letters per episode, and we've done about 700 letters. Let me ask you, does the language of this letter feel like a lot of those other letters, right? I'm just going to read this part again. Uh, I cannot tell you how glad I am that you have made peace and even more than that with the Bongers. Say that to Andre from me and give him a very cordial handshake from me. What I would have given for you to have seen all went was fine. However, keep good heart, address letters directly to me. I will send Gauguin's pictures that are still at the house as soon as he wishes. We owe him the money that he spent on the furniture. You can see how he's completely normal. He's already kind of getting back to business. We need to sort out this. Don't worry, I'll get his pictures back to him. And even that, although it sounds like the typical Van Gogh we know, I don't know if I would be that gracious under the circumstances. I don't know if I would say, this prick that has treated me like this, I don't know if I'm going to do you the favor and send you your art. You know, if you were in such a hurry to get out of here, you could have taken them yourself, right? And I mean, that is what a rush Gauguin was in when he left, that he even left his pictures there. He was in such a rush to get out of there that he left his own pictures there. And it's not like he had a pile of 10 pictures. There were maybe two or three, but he was in such a rush that he left them behind. I mean, those pictures are worth quite a lot. That's how he got out of all, was through his art, right? Cotton Star, good to see you. Then he says, I must go back to hospital, but shall soon be out for good. Well, little does he know that that's not going to be the case. Then he says, write a line to Mother too for me so that no one will be worried. So can you see, he doesn't want people to be worried because he wants his adventure to continue. And he's very right to be concerned because his adventure is about to end. He's about to, he's going to be, he will see one more Christmas in his life. You'll see the Christmas of 1889, and then half a year later he'll be dead, right? And he's trying to continue his adventure, but it's actually slipping out of his hands right now. And then he writes this letter on the back, and this is incredible. This is a letter to Gauguin, and obviously it's a letter that Theo can see. He says, my dear friend Gauguin, I take the opportunity of my first outing from the hospital to write you a couple of words of my profound and sincere friendship. I've often thought of you in the hospital and even in full fever and relative weakness. Why do you think he's often thought of Gauguin? Well, because Gauguin was there at one of the most famous moments in art history. If there's anybody who knows what really happened, it's Gauguin. And Gauguin does have a narrative of his own. He says, tell me, was my brother Theo's trip necessary, my friend? So can you see there's a little bit of opprobrium there? There's a little bit of him saying, was it really necessary to do that? Was it really necessary to bring Theo out here at so much expense? Because this, in a way, is threatening Vincent with his home, right? It's not completely offering an olive branch. This is him in a nice way saying, why did you do that? Then he says, now at least completely reassure everyone, and I pray you yourself to have confidence that all in all, nothing bad exists in this best of worlds where everything is always for the best. So can you see he's writing to Gauguin and he's saying, please reassure everyone that everything's fine. Now, why would he need to say that if he'd cut off his own ear? Why would he need to say to Gauguin, please reassure everyone if he'd cut off his own ear? I suppose you could say, to an extent, Gauguin might say, this guy's crazy. But even more so, if there was this idea that Gauguin had done it, then you would probably get a sense that Gauguin wants to reassure everyone of himself being the good guy and Van Gogh being the bad guy, which is exactly what he ends up doing, right? Anyway, he says, then I would like you to give my kind regards to the good Schuffernecker, that you refrain until more mature reflection on both our parts from speaking ill of our poor little yellow house. So can you see Van Gogh is very well aware that Gauguin has like a poisonous tongue, that Gauguin can say very damaging things about him. And again, what's the difference between Van Gogh and Gauguin? Van Gogh is kind, forgiving, what's the word, self-deprecating. And here he's saying, please don't kind of jeopardize my life any more than it is already jeopardized, right? And in the end, he does lose everything. And even after he loses everything, he still stays friends with Gauguin. And the question then arises, does Gauguin continue to speak ill of the Yellow House? And the answer is yes, he does. Gauguin would continue to speak ill of Van Gogh even after Van Gogh's death. When Van Gogh died, he would say, I told you he was crazy. That's essentially what he said. I wish you prosperity in Paris with a good handshake. Then he says, Roulin has been truly good to me. It is he who has had the presence of mind to make me get out of there before the others were convinced. I'm not quite sure what he means there, but it's certainly interesting. Does he mean get out of the hospital or get out of the bar where everything was going down? I'd be quite interesting. I'd be quite interested to know. Okay, now let's go to the next letter. Joseph Roland to Theo. I wonder where we're going to get a letter to Gauguin. Just want to see how far we've got to go. Geez, I don't think I'm going to make it. 7th, 9th, 17th, 19th, 20th. Oh, yeah, it is. Here's a letter, another letter to Gauguin. So I don't know whether Gauguin has written back to him at this. Oh, he must have. Thank you for your letter. It's a pity we can't see that letter. So I would really like to get to this point, the 22nd or 23rd of January, but I don't think I'm going to be able to get that far. Okay, well, what do you guys think? Do you think I should skip the letters for now? We can continue with them in episode 70, but just deal with this last letter in this episode. What do you guys think? This picture here is actually a portrait that he paints of his doctor. It's quite a nice portrait. So in the midst of this whole trauma, he paints a picture of his doctor, and if you ask me, it's a pretty good execution. Definitely one of his better portraits. He also paints, I think, two cut sunflowers. And then there's a reference to this picture from Gauguin. Self-portrait dedicated to Vincent. We've seen that one. Seen it. And you know what's interesting with this portrait is it's Les Miserables. He's basically saying that he's feeling miserable in this portrait. And so you can see how both these artists rub one another totally the wrong way, totally different people. What do you guys think? Should I read that letter to Gauguin, or should I just end this live? So just too many letters to get through here. Some of them are quite short, but I mean, there's also a letter to his parents, but shouldn't really be his parents, just his mother, because his father wasn't alive at that point. But he says, I've completely recovered. Happy New Year. Blah, blah, blah. Please don't worry. He's trying to do kind of a damage control. So he's very aware, he's very vigilant that he could be losing his fairy tale, and that's exactly what happens. Let's see what you guys say. Read one more. Okay, Stephanie says, as long as we go back. So I'm going to read this letter to Gauguin, written on the 22nd or 23rd of January, because it's quite important. We want to get a sense from Van Gogh himself about what really happened to him, right? We don't want to project onto him or transfer onto him. We want to get a sense from his own words what really happened to him. My dear friend Gauguin, thank you for your letter. Left behind alone on board my little yellow house, as it was perhaps my duty anyway to be the last to leave, I'm not a little put out at my friend's departure. There's an interesting reference to his situation. He's now alone again. You know, Van Gogh has been struggling with loneliness for much of his life, and now it's back to square one. Now he's alone again. I don't know what he means by I'm not a little put out at my friend's departure. I don't know if he means I don't mind or I do mind. I don't know what you guys think. Then he says Roland got his transfer to Marseille, that's his other friend, and has just left. It has been touching to see him these last few days with little Marcel, making her laugh and dandling her on his knee. Have we seen this particular picture? I think that's the postman's wife. Can you see once again? There's so much green in this. Does he envy? Does he envy the fact that they're a happy family or something like that? I mean, he's back to being lonely. So just seeing a family is going to be something that he's going to be envious about. Is that why there's so much green, or is there just green anyway? Even her eyes are green once again. Anyway, he says his transfer means he's being separated from his family, and you will not be surprised that the man whom you and I one evening nicknamed the passerby was very heavy-hearted. And so was I on witnessing that and other upsetting things. When he sang to his child, his voice took on a strange timbre in which one could hear the voice of a woman rocking a cradle or of a sorrowing wet nurse, and then another trumpet sound like a clarion call to France. I reproached myself now that it was I, perhaps insisting too much that you stay on here to await events and giving you so many good reasons for doing so. Look at that. I reproached myself. I reproached myself. Um, unless, of course, that departure was planned beforehand. So, can you see that he's kind of questioning Gauguin's character and his motives and his morals? Did you plan to come here and basically fuck around and then just go home? Was that your plan all along? And that it was perhaps up to me to show I still had the right to be kept fully in the picture. In other words, he's saying maybe it was up to me to make sure I knew what was going on. Be that as it may, I hope we will still like each other enough to be able, if need be, to start afresh. So he's trying to make amends, right? He's trying to be, he says, assuming that the wolf at the door, alas, ever present for those of us artists without means, should necessitate such a measure. So what he says is apologizing for insisting that you stay on here. And you can completely understand that that is exactly what happened, that Gauguin wanted to leave and Vincent didn't want him to leave. But why would Vincent then cut off his ear? Why would Vincent cut off his own ear if he didn't want Gauguin to leave? You mention a canvas of mine in your letters, sunflowers on a yellow background, and make it plain you'd rather like to have it. I don't think it's altogether a bad choice, for if Janine can claim the peony and quash the hollyhock, then surely I, above all, can lay claim to the sunflower. Now, this is really, really interesting, this part. Now, it's interesting that he only gets to this around about, look at where that gray bar is. Can you see? He only gets to this around about halfway. No, it's even further. He only gets to this around about 2/3 through this letter. I'm going to put it on full screen. He says, I think I'll begin by returning what is yours, Gauguin's fencing equipment. Now, he doesn't even say your swords. He just says, I'll return what is yours, while observing that it is my intention after what has happened. That's one of the few references he makes to what has happened. Like even in his letters to Theo, he doesn't really say, he doesn't like say the words after what happened, or you know what I mean? He doesn't even refer to it. This is a very rare instance where he does that, where he says after what happened. And in the same sentence, he's talking about fencing equipment. He says, I'll begin by returning what is yours, while observing that it is my intention after what has happened categorically to deny your right to the canvas in question. But since I commend your intelligence in choosing this canvas, I'll make the effort to paint two of them exactly alike, in which case it can all be done and settled amicably so that you can have your own in the end all the same. So it seems like he doesn't want Gauguin to have that picture that he took. And by the way, that is almost like stealing. Van Gogh painted the sunflowers. Seems like he wants them back, and maybe Gauguin took them because he knew Van Gogh would say, I want them back. Maybe it said to him, this is one of my best paintings. And now Gauguin can basically say, well, I'm only going to give it back to you if you give me what's mine. And if you don't say this and I don't say that, whatever. Could that be a possibility? I just think it's very interesting that in the same paragraph where he talks about returning his swords, he refers to what has happened. And that's why I say, isn't what happened, isn't the way that he lost his ear due to a sword? Because if you think about the real, if you think about the reality of trying to cut off your ear, right? Whether you on absinthe or not, um, and then you compare that to someone having their ear sliced off with a sword, which one do you think is more likely? Which one do you think is more likely? Simple question. Which one's more likely? Take a random person and pay them $1 million to try and cut off their ear, right? And see how far they get with that. And put someone in an argument and give one of them a sword, and one of them ends off Sand's ear. How do you think that happened? I don't think it's so difficult to imagine. The problem is most people, the public, the mainstream, don't know that Gauguin had swords with him in the Yellow House. I just don't know that. It does make sense, right? Okay, let's go on. So then he says, um, I made a fresh start today on my canvas of Mademoiselle Roulin, the one in which, due to my accident, the hands had been left unfinished. So there he is talking about it as an accident. Now, this is the $1 million question. If you'd cut off your own ear, would you call it an accident? No, like if you'd done something to yourself, would you refer to it as an accident? Whereas if Gauguin had done something to him under a situation of maybe Gauguin was drunk, maybe Van Gogh was also on absinthe, and he says this in his letters. He said, we were both arguing, we had arguments that was like batteries running down. So you kind of have the idea that they're both drunk artists, and somewhere within that drunkenness, Van Gogh ends up being injured, right? And you kind of get the idea that he doesn't blame Gauguin for what happened. But why would he refer to it as an accident? If he did it to himself, why would he call it an accident? Because you can't do that by accident. Let me say that again. You can't do that to yourself by accident. I don't think it's ever been done in the history of the world. Um, could be wrong, but who knows? Then he says, um, as an arrangement of colors, the reds moving through to pure orange, building up again in the flesh tones to the chromes, passing through the pinks and blending with the olive and malachite greens. As an impressionist arrangement of colors, I've never devised anything better. So he's really impressed with his picture of Mademoiselle Roulin. I'm sure that if one were to put this canvas just as it is in a fishing boat, even one from Iceland, there would be some among the fishermen who would feel they were there inside the cradle. Um, if you think about it, this is not a bad painting given what has just happened. If you think about Van Gogh's art, it's not a bad painting given the situation that he's in. Again, does this painting suggest that he's mentally ill? It's one of his best paintings. It's probably in the top 20, top 15 even. It's one of the better expressions he's got in a picture. What else does he say? Ah, my dear friend, to achieve in painting what the music of Berlioz and Wagner has already done, an art that offers consolation for the broken-hearted. There are still just a few who feel it as you and I do. And that is exactly what Van Gogh, he knows that that is what he's trying to communicate. Art that offers consolation for the broken-hearted. And guess what? He is broken-hearted right now. Even though he's painted this picture, and I must say I don't really get that sense from this particular picture. I don't feel a sense of consolation. It's vibrant, it's colorful. I don't really get a sense of consolation, but maybe he does. Maybe when he paints this, he's painting a mother figure. He's painting, a mother with quite a big bosom, a motherly figure. Maybe he feels a sense of being consoled through the process of painting it. Anyway, then he says, my brother understands you well, and when he tells me that you are a poor sort of wretch like me, well, that just proves that he understands us. I shall send you your things, but I still have bouts of weakness at times during which I'm in no position to even lift a finger to return your things to you. In a few days' time, I'll pluck up the courage. Why does he need to pluck up the courage? This is also so important. Why does he need to pluck up the courage to go and get Gauguin's swords? Why can't he just collect them and send them off? And in the context of getting those swords, he talks about bouts of weakness. Then he also says, as for the fencing masks and gloves, make as little use as possible of less infantile engines of war. He's referring to Gauguin's swords as engines of war. Doesn't that sound like a kind of obtuse, oblique, or indirect reference to something, some kind of weapon that was used against him? And by calling it infantile engines of war, it's referring to a sword as like a childish engine of war. Isn't he saying, the fact that you had to pick up a sword and cut off my ear, that was a little bit immature, wasn't it? Was that really necessary? Isn't that what he's saying? Then he says these terrible engines of war will just have to wait until then. He's referring to Gauguin's swords as terrible engines of war. It's quite a strong statement. And then he says, I'm writing to you very calmly, but packing up what's left is still beyond me. He's saying it's very hard for me to actually touch these swords, right? And again, I can't overemphasize the fact that these are his own words. I didn't write this letter. I didn't imagine this letter. These are his own words. And he's written this um, pretty much on the 1 month anniversary of when this happened. It's a letter written to Gauguin on the 23rd, 23rd Well, he lost his ear around about the 24th of January. Could even have been on the 23rd. So it's written like literally on the 1 month anniversary. And he makes several references in this one letter to what happened. To the fencing equipment. He refers to the fencing equipment at least 3 or 4 times, to the weapon that I believe Gauguin used to cut off his ear. And I don't seem to remember any information about, like, did they find a razor and that got confiscated, or a knife and that got confiscated. Then he says, and look at this. He talks about so he talks there about fencing masks and gloves. That's one reference. Then another one, infantile engines of war. That's another reference. Then another, terrible engines of war. That's another one. And then he says, I'm writing to you very calmly, but packing up the rest of your stuff, I'm not going to be able to do that right now. In other words, he's saying, if you think about those letters he wrote to Theo and to, I think, his mother, and what he wanted Roland to say, it's like, please reassure them that I'm fine. Please, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. But to Gauguin, he's saying, I'm actually not fine. I still got a bit of PTSD. PTSD from what he did to himself, or PTSD from what you did to me. And then he says, in my mental or nervous fever or madness, I'm not too sure how to put it or what to call it. My thoughts sailed over many seas. And so I can imagine our art historians thought, yes, oh, awesome, thank you so much. You've admitted it. You admitted you mad. And then, okay, Vincent's mad. Got it. There it is in black and white. But he talks about a nervous fever as well, right? And you kind of get the idea that it's a passing thing, that he gets excited because of certain things and then it passes. What's that? Is that madness? Anyway, yeah, so this is a very, very important letter, very, very important letter. And there are going to be a couple more letters to deal with. Stephanie says PTSD. Okay, so I'm not going to take it further than that. We're at just before the 2-hour mark. Timmy, I'm going to have you say bye-bye, and I'm going to put you down. And now we're going to do something slightly different. I'm going to just have a little bit of a conversation with you guys. I want to talk to you about, so we've spoken about the giraffe. As I say, I will return there. I can't take Timmy along because he's goes nuts. I also want to show you the photos I took in America. Let's see if I can find them. Let's just do this. So I saw these pictures for the first time a couple of hours ago. So today, and these were pictures I took with my big camera. Excuse me. So I'm gonna very quickly take you through a couple of photos that I took in Midtown Manhattan. I took far more with my phone. Then a couple of photos at the Denver airport, and then a couple at Yellowstone, and then there's one photo at the Arches, and then the rest are photos of the weaver bird in my garden. So it's about 40 photos. Are you guys ready? Thanks, Stephanie. So we'll go through them quite quickly. I'm going to put it full screen, just like that. Thanks a lot. Thanks very much. So this is a photo I took from my hotel room in Midtown Manhattan. This was pretty much on the first or second day that I was in America. And this is the same street that Rex Heuermann had his original offices. It's literally, it's the other way. So the way the camera's pointing, it's the other way. But this is the view over and across West 36th Street. Thanks so much. Thanks so much. I'll try and get some more pictures of it. That was something I never really got used to, these water storage tanks. They're all over America, all over New York. In South Africa, we've got buildings like that, which we call rondavels, that people live in. So it just was quite weird seeing them at the top of buildings. Let's see if I can show you a quick photo of what I'm talking about. Yeah, so we've kind of got this sort of thing in South Africa. So it's quite weird seeing that sort of thing on the top of a building in Manhattan, if you get my drift. Yeah, here are a couple more. You can see it's the same kind of shape. I know that it's not the same thing. It's for water, but as a South African, it's weird looking at that and not thinking about it. This is another view from my hotel room. And what I remember quite strongly was I wanted to like arrive in America and sort of seamlessly continue covering true crime, continue with YouTube lives and all that kind of thing, because at that time my channel was really on fire. I'd been covering the Murdoch case, and I was the subscribers were just rolling like this. And so I thought, when I get to America, I'm going to try, and even if it's for 10 minutes, whatever, I'm going to try and do lives, at least a live every day. And then, of course, the best laid plans, the first thing that sort of went wrong was my charger. I bought a special charger for America. It didn't work. Then I bought a replacement. That didn't work either. And then it took something like 2 or 3 or 4 days to buy like the whole thing, a brand new charger and the connection to the laptop. So that totally disrupted that transition. So in other words, I made provision before the time, and then when I got there, the thing just didn't work. Then the other thing that didn't work was very early on, I took my cell phone to get a American carrier, the chip, and then it simply just didn't work on my phone. And then I bought another phone. But anyway, that whole process, that and the thing just basically frustrated that whole effort. It basically took a week to get online, if I can put it that way. And then it, I don't know, it was just like after that, then I was going to be moving again, and then it was just very difficult to kind of get back. And it happens very, very quickly on YouTube. If you miss, let's say, 3 days in a row, it's almost like the momentum just sort of completely gets lost. And so that's exactly what happened. And then I think I sort of just decided to like go with it. Like, you're on holiday, I'll come back to this later on. But it was also quite disappointing because it wasn't the way I wanted to get into America. This is a photograph from Denver Airport. I flew from New York to Denver, and then from Denver to Bozeman, Montana, where I was going to meet Lisa. And the reason why, so at this point, I'm kind of in a doggy area, place where you sort of can go outside and walk your dog in the sort of airport area. And it just made me think of the Watts case, because this is where Shanann arrived back. So I felt like I was kind of passing through true crime history. Bear in mind, I wrote like 12 books on the Watts case. And the Denver International Airport is a big part of the Watts case as well. And so I really wanted to go into Denver and go into Boulder. Like, when I was there, I was like, damn, I don't really feel like going to Montana. I feel like leaving the airport and hanging out here for a while. But then I did come back to Denver at the end of my trip. This airplane and this airline just reminds me so much of the Watts case. I don't know about you guys. When I see that, it reminds me of it. So this is Yellowstone, the northern part of Yellowstone, and you can see two wolves in this particular photo. Although it seems nearby, this is my telephoto lens at full stretch, whatever. Um, there were actually, I think, 5 or 6 wolves, and I managed just to get a photo of about 2 of them. But as you can see, snow as far as the eye can see. Let's do it like that. There he's, or like a little bit like a dog just sitting there. Okay, and I would to say it like part of my plan when I part of my plan when I left South Africa was to kind of avoid winter. So like I left South Africa on the 1st of April, April Fool's Day, and it was just starting to get cold, like not cold, cool. And so I thought, I'm going to go to America and I'm going to it's going to be spring in America, it's going to be warm. And I can't tell you how many weeks I spent in America with snow as far as the eye could see, like this. I was in Yellowstone for a couple of days, well, one full day in Yellowstone, but I was also in Big Sky, Montana for 1 or 2 days. And then I was in Boise, Idaho, where it also snowed. And then I was in Jackson Hole, where there was snow everywhere. So it was almost like I spent 3 full weeks pretty much in like snowy landscapes. And so this has felt like a really long winter. Like the fact that it's still cold, it's still pretty cold here in South Africa right now. It's felt like the longest winter I've ever had. I'm done with winter. Um, I don't know if you can see in this picture, but there's actually a bear in this hole. I think you can sort of barely make out the snout there, but there is actually a bear in this hole with 2 or 3 cubs. That's in Yellowstone. Robbie Robin, it's good to have had you with us. I hope you have a good sleep. Catch up in the ending tomorrow. Okay, catching the World Cup final. Cool. I'm not sure if I posted this picture on YouTube. I'm not sure if I did. And then there's not quite sure what that's called. Is an ibex. Anyway, it's a big goat in Yellowstone. And there's just some winter photography. This is also Yellowstone. There's a bison pretty up close. Don't worry, I didn't approach it on foot. This was through the window of the vehicle. It's kind of like a really big, shaggy dog, right? I quite like that level of detail. You know, if you're not going to use your phone, then you need to contribute something in terms of your photography. Have you ever seen that level of detail when you're looking at a bison? Not bad, right? Big horned ram. Okay. Okay, and then this is just a picture over Yellowstone. I did put a picture very similar to this on Instagram. This is the hotel I was staying in Big Sky, Montana. You can see this was my setup. I had my laptop, then I had a screen, a second screen, and then I had my phone, and then I would, I did a couple of lives that way. I've got to say, in all honesty, I thought not you guys, because you guys are here, but I thought um, my American audience are gonna go gaga, um, seeing me in America and following me in America, and just they're just going to be curious. And I was quite disappointed that no one really showed up. I don't know. Again, I don't know whether me not posting for that period that I didn't post caused me to lose momentum and lose interest, and people just like forgot about me. But it was definitely pretty demoralizing, um, being like, for example, in Big Sky, Montana, and like 50 people would show up to chat. And I was talking about true crime. Not always. Sometimes it was a combination of things. But do you remember I did TCRS in Montana, TCRS in California, and then no one really showed up. I was really quite surprised by that. Um, and but in the same way, the fact that people didn't show up meant, well, I wasn't losing anything by not doing it, so I didn't really do it. But it definitely wasn't what I expected. I thought now it makes sense. Americans live in America; they don't need to know about America. It's like, so what? Um, but I certainly thought it was interesting for me, and it was, and I just kind of made it that I'm doing. I didn't like go to America to grow my channel. I went to America to, how can I put it, to um, to explore, because I wanted to see America, and I also wanted to add a level of authenticity to all the stuff that I'd seen. Like being there in person does count for something, and I sort of felt even if it doesn't count for anything to my audience, it counts for something for me, and I really got a much deeper sense, even of the John Benet Ramsey case, where I've written like 14 books, of the culture in Boulder. Just being there, you got a much richer sense of what that felt like. The culture in Moscow, Idaho, the culture in Idaho, the culture in Rexburg, and that's something that's quite difficult to communicate. And you never hear about that in true crime. What the culture's like, and it was a conversation I really wanted to have in terms of the Laurie Vallow case, because um, and yeah, ultimately I just didn't even go there, because you could tell this is for LDS people only, in a way. Kind of figured that part out. Um, Thanks a lot, Lana. Thanks a lot for that. Stephanie says, I was so happy to meet you. That's cool. Yeah, I mean, besides what I'm saying, obviously it was a huge highlight to meet um, you guys, especially Stephanie and her husband. I mean, I think you guys are the first, in a way, the first Americans I met in America. I mean, but also the first TCRS fans, right? But I mean, that was really special because Manhattan was special. I didn't really enjoy Broadway. I was struggling to stay awake, but it was still a very um, magical experience, the whole thing. And going up in that building was incredible. Looking down on New York at night, standing on that glass floor, that was all really incredible. And it was also nice meeting people that I didn't expect to meet. There were people that I knew I was going to meet on the way, and that was awesome. And then there were people I didn't know I was going to meet. There were people in Boise, Idaho, that were TCRS, part of the TCRS flock, but they were attending the trial anyway. And it was, one of them gave me a toy. It's a cow that moves. And so she gave it to me, and I brought it home, and it's one of Timmy's favorite toys. And then the one of the most amazing things was ending the trip and then having someone I didn't really know contact me and say, "We know you. Would you want to meet for dinner?" And like, to be honest, I was very distrusting. I thought something's going on here. And then I went ahead with it, and that's how I met Stephanie L. And that was such a awesome way to end the whole trip. So I must say, America itself was amazing, and it was really nice meeting you guys. And yeah. So anyway, let me continue with these photos. There's just a bit of a closer shot. There you can actually see the view from the airplane. Just it looks like the North Pole. It's just ice, snow everywhere. And so that is the Grand Tetons. That's just around the corner from Jackson Hole. And I actually saw a wolf on this probably 10 minutes after this photo was taken, or before this photo was taken. I saw a wolf, and I took quite a nice photo of it on Instagram. Yeah, that was Kat. Oh, Kat Kruger, you were here. Wow. Yeah, and I mean, Timmy loves that cow. He really does love it. Mrr. Yeah, so thank you very much for that. Okay, and then the next one, well, that's basically just the black and white version of it. And I mean, that's something I also really enjoyed about my trip to America, was just the photography. I enjoy photography, and if I didn't do anything else, it was just so worthwhile seeing and photographing some of these landscapes. I mean, this is the sort of thing I wouldn't mind hanging up in my home. And this is, of course, very close to the area where Gabby Petito was buried, where she died. And a lot of my trip was the idea for the trip, the inspiration for the trip, the itinerary of the trip was to a large extent inspired by Gabby Petito, big time. And so it was while trying to, like, I'd seen this wolf through the vehicle window. And so while trying to backtrack to try and get a photo of this wolf with this big camera of mine, that, this fox came sauntering up to us. From a long distance away, this fox just kind of trotted down the road, and the next thing, it was like right in front of us. And there he is going, it's like, okay, sorry, dude, we're not going to give you anything. And then he, right there, just went over the embankment and disappeared. And so that's another shot just from around the corner of the, what's it? Just trying to think of the name of that river. Spread Creek. Yeah, another thing that was so weird for me was the moment you step off the side of the road, you sink to your knees, to your thighs in snow. We don't get this kind of snow in South Africa. Like in South Africa, it snows this much, and an hour later it's all gone. You're lucky if half of the sole of your shoe sinks into snow. I mean, sometimes, and in the high mountains, we can get a certain amount of snow, but you'll never really have snow next to highways that last for weeks and months like they do in America. We just, it's too dry and it's not cold enough. This is the only photo I took with my big camera of in the Arches National Park in Utah. By the way, this hoodie that I'm wearing comes from Moab as well, from the co-op in Moab. What you're seeing on screen here, this is known as the Devil's Garden. Yeah, that's the Devil's Garden. And then I'm going to end off with just a couple of pictures of the weaver bird. Now, I must tell you, I've lost count. Like, I've no idea whether this is the same weaver bird as the one that's been building nests. But if it is, it must be at about 20 nests that it's built now and destroyed. I mean, it's incredible. And one lesson I've kind of learned from this little bird is that life is quite hard. This bird hasn't this bird hasn't built a nest and been forced to tear it down and then checked itself into an asylum. Like, I can't deal with this. Like, this is just so much work, and I'm overwhelmed. It's just, okay, I'll build a nest, I'll do my best. Okay, you don't like it, well, I'll build another one. And he's just so full of vim and vigor. He's just so got so much energy. And so I'm happy to provide little balls of seeds for him and, help sustain. I'm kind of this bird's Theo. Keep weaving. There you go. Okay. So there's the artwork. Look how beautiful that is. That's a nest that's in process. And I think what he's got in his mouth there is for the inside of the nest. It's kind of like the fluffy pillow. Now, one of the secrets of bird photography is you've always got to try and get a clear shot of his eye. If you get his eye in, that's part of getting a really good photo. It's unfortunate that that part of his beak is behind his leg, but otherwise not too bad a photo. I really like the way this wing is in focus. This part over here. Anyway, that's another angle. Again, just look how beautiful this has been woven. And that's him looking straight at the camera, like what's going on here. I think part of the reason why it's been such an ordeal for him is because his nests are like right at my balcony. And I think the female is like, sorry, this is too close for comfort. It's like, don't take this personally. I've got nothing against your weaving. I don't like someone looking into my bedroom window. I don't like a monster human being looking into my bed, and I'm the one that's got to sit on the eggs, not you, kind of thing. That I kind of get the feeling that's what the female's not terribly happy about. And so he has actually started making nests slightly away from the balcony. We'll see how successful he is with that. Let's do that. So there you can see the three nests. I don't think these nests still exist. I think this one's been torn down, and I think at least one of these has been torn down as well. But like right now, there are 4 nests again. So this guy's really done a lot of work. He's really got a high maintenance female that is directing his efforts. You know, if Van Gogh was putting a lot of prep into the yellow house, this bird has built like 20 nests. And I think that's it. That's the last picture. That's the last picture. Quite a nice picture as well. So let's see if I gone through everything. So yeah, the last thing I wanted to say is I've been really confused over the past while, I don't know how long, couple of weeks, because my power has been like disconnected. So I can't tell you how many times I'd be sitting behind my computer writing a script, and then everything goes completely black. You know, computer goes off, all the lights are out, everything goes completely black, and then I've got to wait more than 2 hours for the power to come back on. And that's not supposed to happen. You know, I spent something like $8,000-9,000 at current exchange rates to set up solar, and so I'm not supposed to have solar and load shedding, and so I really was kind of getting confused, like what the hell is going on? And in the beginning, I thought I'd maybe I had the geyser on and the stove and XYZ. So I thought, maybe I've just forgotten something. I did follow up. I did contact the solar dude, the guy who installed it. I got a electricity bill that was like 4 times higher than normal once I'd had solar, and he said, no, based on your numbers, this actually looks right. And I thought something odd's going on here, and it's like quite weird. Like on the one hand, I would ask this guy who's like the expert, and on the other hand, I would be just working and busy and didn't really have time to sort it out. And then it would happen again. I'd be working and everything would go black, and then it would be another 2 hours, and then I thought, was that, was today overcast so the solar couldn't charge, whatever. And so anyway, I eventually figured it out. Or rather, the solar dude kind of paid attention, and he said, "Go down to your inverter," and he told me to do X, Y, Z. And so the problem was this. I don't know if you can see it. Can you see there's like a black mark on there? So at some point there'd been a short, and so the whole system didn't really work. So in other words, I was basically not the what do you call it? The solar system was basically not functional. And so because this fuse had blown, I don't know if you guys can see. Can you see it sort of black? Anyway, and so fortunately, all I had to do was go and get another fuse. So there was no like serious damage or anything. I just had to get another fuse, and then everything was back to normal. But this whole process of figuring out that something was wrong took something like a month. Kind of because I was distracted, and kind of because I was taking the word of this guy. Like if he said nothing was wrong, well then I guess everything's fine. And what it just shows is even if you're not an expert about something, you need to nevertheless apply critical thinking, right? And nobody's going to care more about your situation than you. So, obviously I needed this expert just to look at the data and go, I see there's a clear change over here, right? But he's got lots of clients, he's got lots of people that he's got to pay attention to. All I'm saying is I feel a bit dumb that I didn't focus more on this and apply my mind myself sooner. And that's why we've got to be careful relying on other people for our information. Um, when you can also think critically about certain things that you may not be an expert about it, but work out what the problem is, right? And yeah, because I mean, I don't know how many times I sat in complete darkness and like, what's going on? And then and I was trying to figure out, was today overcast? Did I have the geyser on all day? But that doesn't make sense, whatever. And then I eventually realized this doesn't make sense, and then I figured it out. And that's why you've got to keep, if you're in a situation that's maybe technical or whatever it is, ask yourself, does it make sense? I know we ask the question all the time in true crime, but it really is important. Does it make sense? So anyway, I'm glad that it's been solved, and so I'm now back to having the lights on 24/7, and now I can kind of get back to being productive. But it definitely was effing up my work ethic. You're trying to get going, and then the power goes out. It's definitely a way to F that up. Yeah, that's it. That's also how I feel. And I mean, the other side of it is when you are talking to an expert, keep an open mind. They may know better. It's not like you know better about literally everything, just that you need to think critically. And that's something that didn't happen in the Lucy Letby case. That the doctors that saw what was going on just assumed that everything was okay. They in a weird way, what I did with this fuse was I allowed a situation to be prolonged and to continue because I just wasn't focused, and wasn't like aware something's wrong. Pay attention. And we tend to get distracted so easily. We tend to be very busy or whatever it is, and then we don't pay attention, and that's when things go on behind our backs, and we need to be vigilant, kind of thing. So I've now gone through my list of all the things I want to go through, but there's one thing that's left, and I kind of need your advice on this. I'm really confused now. I'm really like, what do I do? My plan was to return to America in September, like somewhere around mid-September. But the Koberger case starts on the 2nd of October, and I think the Kate and Armstrong case starts round about that day as well. I think they're both the 2nd of October. Now, 4 months ago, I would have been I would be in like, wow, these cases are in America, like the Laurie Vallow case, the Laurie Vallow trial. I want to go to America and be there while these cases are playing out. But it feels like the lesson I learned was don't go to these trials in person because it's really expensive, it's really time consuming, it's very difficult to set up your stuff and report on it. And it's much easier just to stay at home and report from home and do that consistently. It's much easier to do that. In other words, when I did this in with the Laurie Vallow trial, I actually felt like I was being punished not only the expense to get there and to get to Boise, to stay in Boise, to go to the court building, and also to go to the court building. It felt like, okay, well, this is not the way to do it. And I'd experienced that in South Africa. I also attended the Henry van Breda trial. I stayed in hotels, and it cost so much to do that, where it was much easier just to stay at home and stream. And of course, it's far more authentic if you do go there. It's far more real, and you get far more background when you're there than when you're just getting the news like everybody else. Anyway, the question that I'm asking is, what do you guys suggest? Like, I'm not, at this point, I'm not like in a situation of I've got to grow my channel at all costs or anything like that. I just don't know whether it's so wise to be in America when you've got two of these trials going on, one in Texas and one in Moscow. So I don't know what you guys suggest. Do you think I should return, or do you think I should return afterwards, or what do you guys think? Let's see what you guys say. Thanks a lot, Deborah. The weather will be tough. Now that's already a big kind of warning that I'm prepared to respect. I mean, the other side is covering the Caitlin Armstrong case, and there the weather will be a lot better. And if I'm honest, I think I'm more interested in the Caitlin Armstrong case than the Koberger case. To me, the Koberger case has dragged on for so long, and to me, it's kind of obvious what's happened. I don't know whether and I also feel sensitive about having been to Moscow. I honestly feel quite sensitive about the whole, it's an inner student community, and do you want to re-traumatize that community, right? Like when I went to the house, I felt like you almost like you're stirring up old wounds. There are people there that want to study and that want to have fun and that want to enjoy their college time, and here you are dealing with a quadruple murder, and you know what I mean. And that's been quite hard to shake. I mean, if I'm honest, I feel that whenever I think about the Koberger case, I'm aware of the wound to the community, and I feel like you're aiding and abetting Koberger whenever you report willy-nilly on the Koberger case. Whereas I feel with Mo Wilson, I really feel that story isn't being told, and I'm definitely interested in that story. It's a beautiful, not that the girls in Moscow weren't, but it's different. It's a beautiful cyclist in the prime of her life who had that taken away from her. And it's just a different kind of story to the Moscow one. Helena says, your lives are fantastic. It was good to see you and be with friends in chat. It would be easier for you to do your work from your home base. It would be a lot easier. Would be a lot easier. So my feeling at the moment is I want to go to back to Manhattan. I want to browse around Connecticut, possibly look for places to temporarily rent for like a month or two, whatever. This is like thinking in terms of the future. Look at the beautiful autumn colors. and maybe even just do a quick trip to Gilgo Beach, Long Island, whatever. Take some photos, whatever, and then do a trip down to uh, South Carolina. Someone offered me a place to stay there for about 3 weeks, so I could potentially cover some of the trial, um, either trials while I'm actually in America. I'd prefer to do it here because it's easier to set up and everything. um, but anyway, cover the trial for about 3 weeks, and then potentially go to the trial in Texas. Um, I want to go to Florida anyway, just because I haven't been there. And then also, I'm just trying to think what's also down there. Yeah, Texas. And then I don't know if it just gets really expensive if you go all the way to the West Coast, and then the further you go away from New York, the further you've got to come back, and it just adds expense. So at this point, I'm thinking about doing the East Coast of America over about a month, and then I'm not exactly sure what to do after that. I'm not 100% sure. Um, if I spend 3 weeks in Myrtle Beach, it's I think North Myrtle Beach, then I can kind of work while I'm there, and then I can also, like I did when I was in Boise, Idaho, on weekends I can go and look at things that I want to go and see, like maybe go to Pennsylvania and look at where Koberger grew up or something like that. But for me, it's not so much that it's got to make economic sense. It's more um, that I'm genuinely interested in the fabric of these cases, and the fabric of America. And I'm really wanting to go back to Boulder, to be honest. Really would like to go back to Boulder when there's not smoke from Canada over there. Anyway, those are just my thoughts. Um, so either I must do what I originally planned to do, or I must postpone it given these two cases, and then go kind of in May next year. So I don't know. Trying to decide. Yeah, yeah. Cape Canaveral, yeah. I mean, the plan was always to watch the Artemis 2 launch in November next year. That's been the plan all along. But my friend Webb said, look, you can watch a rocket launch every second day from California, but it's not quite the same when it's a moon shot, right? Yeah, maybe I need to be more do more networking. Maybe I need to do that. Yeah, Timmy will miss me all over again. I've actually been saying to him, Timmy, do you mind if I go away again? Yeah. Yeah, no, I believe so. I believe so. I mean, fires in Canada, fires in Maui, fires in Greece. I know someone who had to cut their holiday short, not in Santorini, but somewhere in Greece because of fires in Greece. And anyway, I think we are due to have a very hot summer here in South Africa. Like when they say the Antarctic ice is at such a low point, well, guess where the Antarctic is? It's just south of South Africa. So the fact that there's so little ice there means we're probably going to have a very, very, very hot summer here. We'll see. At this point, I don't actually know how to bring Timmy with, but yeah, hopefully I can sort that out at some point. Yeah, I mean, wouldn't that be awesome to get a couple of us, maybe 20 of us, and we all watch a rocket launch and then I don't know, have a do some sort of session on the beach or something. Might be quite cool. Chelsea says it hasn't been too hot here. Okay. Stephanie, I wanted to tell you, I don't know if you know, Iceland, I think, has family in Maui. They all safe, but obviously not only family, friends as well. Um, they're safe, but obviously seriously impacted by what's happened. I think everyone in Maui has been. Yeah, Australia and South Africa as well. Anyway, Valentine says it quite well. Thank you. I think it's time to say goodbye. My voice is backing up anyway. Lana says if you go to Boulder, you can stop by my place. It's next to Skinwalker Ranch. I think your coverage from home is very good. Cool. Well, Lana, it's like Lana Lang, right? You know that I was in Boulder earlier this year. I actually met Jean Carris. We had a really good time together. Um, yeah. So anyway, I'll try and remember. Lana, are we friends on Instagram or are you on Patreon? If you're not on Instagram, sorry, if we're not connected on Instagram, follow me on Instagram. I don't know if you have my Instagram thing. I don't know if I can share it here. Don't think I think I must ask Stephanie to share my profile. I think is this it? Here it is. So Lana, just connect with me on here if you want to. By the way, Jean said to me that she's got a holiday home, something like that, or a family ranch near Austin. So if I do cover the trial in Austin, that's a potential HQ that one could use. So we'll see. Okay. Thanks a lot, guys. I think we're going to end it there. One comment that I just have in my mind that I haven't been able to forget. Someone was saying that Lucy, the baby killer, that she was just 25 years old when these crimes were committed, and so she didn't care about being a spinster. She didn't care that she was single or whatever. Well, Koberger was 28 when he committed his crimes, and I think he did care. So I don't think I don't think it's a case that like how old must you be when you feel the effects of being alone and whatever. Uh, so do you know what I mean? So although I think it's valid, she wasn't 33 when those crimes were committed. She was 25. I still think that she felt alone and she didn't like feeling alone, and it made her feel helpless, right? Whenever I see Valentine, I think Velveteen Rabbit. Yeah. Oh, I haven't done Instagram. Are you on Twitter? If you're on Twitter, that's maybe a way of getting in touch. Otherwise, you can email me if you want to do it that way. I don't know how Yvonne is. I tried to contact her on Instagram. I don't know if she's still on Instagram. I must say we definitely miss her in Van Gogh letters because she was always part of it. So yeah, hopefully she's okay. I really don't know one way or the other. Like I said, I did reach out to her. She seems to be off Instagram, and I hate to say it, but that can't be a very good sign. But maybe it isn't. I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, exactly. Okay, cool. Thanks, Lena. Okay, guys, I think you'll agree with me that this was a pretty interesting episode 69, given the question that we're asking. You know, it really is an interesting whodunit in a way. You know, it really is fascinating. And we're not done yet. We still want to get more input from Gauguin. We want to find out, when does Vincent go and get those terrible weapons of war? When does he get the swords, and when does he send them off? And I want to actually try and see if I can get hold of Gauguin's letters, because as far as I know, there's another website where you can read them. Because I think it's not um, helpful just getting Van Gogh's letters all the time. So Gauguin's letters are harder to get hold of, but I think it is possible to get hold of them. Yeah, we are missing Yvonne. Yvonne, if you're listening, we miss you. We want to know how you're doing. I must say, I also love Manhattan. Yeah. Stephanie, what do you mean, no way? Zircon says, I'm convinced Gauguin cut his ear. Okay. I'll try and get hold of them for the next episode. I mean, I don't know if you guys know, I think Gauguin wrote a book, and I know Emile Bernard wrote a book um, about partially about Gauguin. So yeah. Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. Um, I don't know how you can leave Timmy. Well, when I left the previous time, I left Timmy in my home, so nothing changed for him except the fact that I wasn't there. And then I had someone stay here and take him for walks every day. And yeah, but um, I've got to be honest. When I was away from home, I actually didn't. I only missed him when I saw other dogs and when I saw people with dogs. I really didn't miss him as much as I thought I would. I say that to my shame. Yeah, I kind of enjoyed my freedom in the States. I enjoyed being on the move and doing things whenever I wanted to. Here in South Africa, whenever I do something, it's with Timmy. And although I enjoy that, I guess there's certain things you can't do with a dog. Like you can't go into certain restaurants. You can't just go into a supermarket. So I don't know. Maybe I'm psychopathic. I don't know. She did take very good care of him, and Timmy loves her when she comes to visit, or when Timmy sees her. You can see when he hears her voice on the phone. You can hear that he knows who she is and he likes her. So you know, he didn't have a horrible experience. You know. And I'm not being funny when I say, you know, when I came back from America and Timmy saw me, I wasn't exactly. I didn't feel like he was. He seemed a little bit uncertain, to be honest. He didn't seem like, "Whoa, I'm so glad to see you home. I love you. I love you. I love you." He seemed a little like, "Oh, is it you? Yeah, you betrayed me. You left me alone." It seemed more like that. Like schnauzers aren't stupid. And I was a little bit hurt that he didn't seem more excited to see me or smell me even. So anyway, yeah. I don't know if you heard that Maui apparently what started the fires, they say, is a power line broke off and hit the ground. And they're saying that may have started the fires and yeah, and I think people are talking about lawsuits and also talking about um, I think that power entity is struggling financially and they're trying to cut some sort of deal. Yeah, I think so as well. Um, yeah, he loves being taken for a walk. Yeah, he didn't know who to go to. Okay, well, I think on that note, I'm going to bid you guys adieu. Let's see if we can get Timmy to make an appearance. Timmy, come. Come, boy. It's actually 5 o'clock in the morning here, so theoretically, I could probably take him for a walk in about 40 minutes. Timmy, come, do you want to go for a walk? The magic words. Go for a walkie. Hey, do you want to go for a walk? Yeah, you want to go for a walk, hey? Come, come, boy, come, 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 boy, come. Shaking off the negative energy that this might be a false alarm. Come, boy, come, boy. Timmy, come. Oh, you don't like being woken up, hey? Okay, Timmy, this is Timmy saying goodbye. Like I said, I'm going to try and show you guys more photos of the giraffe. And hey, and Timmy won't be coming with when I do that because he just, as I say, freaks out. Watch now when I scratch his throat. He can't stop yawning. Watch this. Yeah, good boy. Hmm? Everyone's go a bit lower. Very good, Tom. There we go. So yeah, when I scratch his chest, I know I'm hitting the right spot when he yawns. He seems to like that. Anyway, um, regards to Ralph, I don't know if other Stephanie's still here. By the way, thanks Stephanie for sending that footage through. I've downloaded it. I just haven't had a chance to look at it, but thanks so much. Kat Kruger, I'm so glad that I'm seeing you here just because Timmy has loved that little toy, and that was a really thoughtful gift. And it's come all the way to South Africa, and he really loves it. We play with it just about every day. So it's also a nice, tough toy. It's withstood quite a lot of, you know, argy bargy. So yeah, cool. Okay, good night, guys. I hope you guys sleep well, and I hope you guys have a good Sunday tomorrow. I hope you guys have a good rest of your weekend. All the best. See you guys next time. See ya. Oh, thanks a lot for the super chats. And Mods, thanks a lot for keeping this rowdy group in check. You know, I know it's been very difficult getting everyone to behave, but thanks a lot. Okay, all the best. Sleep well.